Hi, my name is Hiba, and this is my presentation on interviews and questions. So, I'm sure everybody knows what an interview is. When you apply for a job, companies will reach out to you and talk to you to assess who you are as a person. So, how do you land an interview? First and foremost, you have to apply for job listings. So, through Cal Poly Pomona, we have specific connections through Handshake, which I would look into if you don't know about that already. Then, of course, we have LinkedIn, Indeed, any other recruiting websites, and of course, company websites. Once you apply, somebody will go through these applications and an HR manager or recruiter will reach out to you to schedule an interview. So this means you have to constantly check your emails, constantly check your texts and your phone calls. Especially for phone calls, make sure you do have a voicemail box set up just in case, you miss the call. That way they can leave a message at the very least. Normally, you can expect interviews to last 30 minutes to an hour, could be less or more, but that's just the standard time. If you do have an in-person interview, I would show up at least 15 minutes early. And I've heard if you do have like a Zoom meeting or an online meeting to show up 5 minutes early or directly on time. That way you don't interfere with the waiting rooms or any previous interviews. So, interview attire, do's and don'ts. Do's, dress business casual or business formal. Dress in neutral colors, so black, gray, tan. It's 2025, sometimes people say you can wear colors, but I would always stick to the old school way. Tuck your shirt in, that way you look neat and organized, and wear dress shoes. For the ladies, regular dress shoes would be like heels or flats. Don'ts. Do not dress too casual. It's always better to be dressed up than to be dressed down. Do not wear bright, flashy patterns or show up with dirty or wrinkled clothes, and do not wear clothes that are too baggy or too tight where it might come off unprofessional or provocative or whatever it may be. You don't want to give off the wrong impression, so don't leave any opportunity for the wrong impression to be given. Here's like a picture of what you could expect. So for the man, he has a button up under, he has a blazer on top, slacks, and then dress shoes. Same for the ladies, except she does have flats on the bottom. I do want to point out, take a look at their hair. On the left, the man does have like a slick back haircut, and then on the right, she does have her hair pinned back a little bit, so it's out of her face. You want to make sure that it's looking clean and cut and not in your face. So depending on your hairstyle, you might want to look up personal things depending on your hair type, because not everybody can do a slick back or pin it up that way, but that is just something to note. In general, you want to look clean, professional, smell good, look good. So, there are two types of interviews. There's a behavioral interview and a technical interview. So, the behavioral interview is just to determine the type of person you are. So, it's going to determine your course of actions, how you work, how you handle difficult situations. It's going to show who you are as a person. For technical, this is more to assess your skill level. How are you going to solve engineering questions? What are your critical thinking skills? How do you apply your knowledge from school or your general knowledge? And sometimes this can even be in the form of like an exam, a written exam, a coding exam, anything it may be. You might go onto a site and do something. Just depends on your major, the role, what company you're working with. So for behavioral questions, these are, I'd say, the most common questions. The first one will always, always, always 9 times out of 10 be tell me about yourself. This is your way to introduce yourself and make a mark. Second, you can have questions like, what are your strengths and weaknesses? You always want to answer with your strengths. And then when it comes to your weaknesses, don't say something too cliche like, my weakness is I'm a workaholic, because they're going to know you're just trying to impress them. But also, when you state your weakness, state it and then state how you fix it or how you combat it. And of course, don't say anything too crazy. Like, don't say my weakness is C++, plus plus. I suck at C++. Plus plus. Never say anything to put yourself down. Tell me about a time you demonstrated leadership. So this is your opportunity to talk about clubs or even, if you worked on a project, maybe you were the lead of the project, a group project, anything. Next would be how would you deal with the conflict with the coworker? And finally, tell me about a challenge and how you faced it. So there's so many varieties of these questions, but I'd say once you have these 5 questions down, you can answer any type of question given to you. Like, how would you deal with the conflict? They might give you a specific example, like, what would you do if you're working on a project and somebody doesn't like how you did one specific thing? They can change these and just word it differently, but if you have the answers to these five questions solidified, then you should be able to answer any variation of the question. So for technical interview questions, it is going to depend on your major, of course. So for example, if you're electrical or computer engineering, they could ask you something as simple as what's the difference between an AC and DC current. For mechanical, they can ask you about the second law of thermodynamics. For civil or construction, they can ask you what is the purpose of a soil test. So obviously these are very basic questions. It can range from simple questions to complex questions. So again, if they do end up giving you like a written exam, it could be a little harder than, of course, something you would verbally answer. And a lot of the times, sometimes they'll even send you an exam to do on your own and send it back to them. There's so many variations of technical interview questions. So I would look into it within your specific major. Talk to your professors and talk to people who interview for the type of roles you're specifically looking at. So how do we answer these questions? So the biggest thing that people are teaching now is the STAR method. So this stands for situation, task, action, and result. So for the situation, you're going to describe the situation, who, what, when, where, and this is your opportunity to contextualize, set the scene. For the task, you're going to explain what needs to happen, what are the challenges, what are you applying, what do you have to combat. For action, this is where you're gonna basically talk about your solution. What did you do? How did you change what's going on? So, what was your plan? And you want to provide details about how you're going about this. Finally, is the result. So, what was the outcome? Describe a clear outcome and an ending to the challenges that you talked about in the task and action. So let's give an example. So let's start with tell me about yourself because this isn't something that you can answer necessarily with the STAR method because it's not really like you have to talk about a specific situation. This is a general question. So this is your elevator pitch. So basically, if you were in the elevator with the recruiter for 2 minutes, what would you say and how would you catch their attention? You always want to start with the basics, of course, so your name, your major, and your school, just to give a flat background. You can talk about what you particularly like about your major, your projects, your experiences, your clubs. This is where you're going to sell yourself because you're going to show why you are a prize to the interview and what you have to offer, what you've been working on, showing your passion. Finally, I would try to connect a little bit back to the company, and then you're just going to wrap up with a demonstration of your interest or drive. So, here I'm going to give you an example of what I might say. This might not be perfect, but this is what I worked with at the Career Center to come up with. First and foremost, thank you for this opportunity to interview with this foundation. So, like I mentioned, demonstrate that you're thankful for the opportunity. Next, my name is Hiba, and I'm currently pursuing a degree in computer engineering at Cal Poly Pomona with an expected graduation date of May next year. You don't always have to include graduation, but it is helpful for some companies. Within my major, I am particularly interested in programming, data analytics, and automotive system development. I'm a member of the Alpha Zeta Delta sorority, serving on my university's Greek Council and Engineering's Dean's Advisory Board. So that's just some general background about me. Now is the connection to the company and what you do outside of work and school, some personalization. So I also noticed that your organization partners with ESPN, which broadcasts F1, something I find fascinating. I'm currently working on becoming a part of my school's Formula SA team, and outside of my academics, I enjoy attending car shows and spending time with my friends. I consider myself a social and easygoing person, and I strive to maintain a healthy work-life balance to ensure I can perform at my best. So here I'm connecting back to a specific company I interviewed for. They had some connections with ESPN, so it shows that I did do a little bit of research, and it shows how I'm personally connected to the company. I also show how I'm currently working on stuff related to the company. And when you add just a little personal touch, it kind of shows just your general personality. And then you want to wrap it up. So I'm committed to achieving my goals by balancing hard work and continuous learning. I'm eager to take full advantage of this internship opportunity to gain valuable experience and knowledge. Just wrapping it up to seem friendly and confident and eager to be a part of the team. So now I'm going to give you another example of a more straightforward answer for a question like, tell me about a challenging team dynamic. So we're going to start with the situation. Again, in the STAR method situation. So this last semester, I took an upper division elective course where I took an environmental class to diversify a little bit outside of tech. In this class, we focused on sustainable communities, and the majority of our semester was spent on working with a local sustainable cooperative. The project was to deal with issues, the cooperative, like their member retention, their gardening plan, and so forth. The issue, however, was that my group for this project was half of the class. So for me, that was about 15 people. Next is the task. So basically, you're going to show what you need to give the solution for, what's the issue. So I would say, I already know how big group projects go. So from the first day, I took a leadership role with the agreements of my group, and I got to work discussing communication, strategies, and availability. This wasn't like the typical group project where the project is just for the class. We were dealing with real people and real problems. As soon as I found out what was expected from us in running dates, we were already losing people as some people stopped showing up to class or some people stopped responding. So here I'm very clearly saying, this is the issue because there's so many people within the group, and that's something I need to give a solution for. So action, what did I do? So with the people I had, we split down into smaller groups and divided those who were missing in action into the subgroups. Those who were present took it upon themselves to work in their respective groups, and those who were usually absent took on smaller roles. This naturally formed a foundation for the overall group and subgroups, giving everyone a task and a role. Result. So, what was the outcome? Thankfully, when it came down to the final presentation, the way we had structured the mini groups and split up the work allowed us to present the solution smoothly and in an organized manner. The cooperative was impressed with our work and presented it at their annual seminar with welcoming hands. We also received an A grade. I'm currently still in contact with the cooperative, working on their website, which was one of the tasks they assigned us. So here I'm wrapping it up, showing our results straight up. They presented it at their annual seminar. We got an A grade, and I'm still working with the company on further uh, problems and, well, a problem that we had, but I'm still continuing to work on them. So, at the end of the interview, again, maybe you bombed the whole interview. You still have a chance. So, again, you want to demonstrate gratitude for the opportunity and ask questions. So, when they ask you, do you have any questions for us? You're never going to say no. You're always going to ask something. Some people recommend 3 questions, so I would try to go about that. Create a list of, questions you might ask someone. Some examples would be, what are the biggest challenges someone in this role might face? And what are some examples of projects the role you're applying for might work on? So these two are just general questions for you to feel out the company. See if you want to work there as well. Maybe you're interviewing, but you don't really fit in with the company. This is your opportunity to find out. Maybe a more personal question would be, what influenced you to work for this company? So now you're creating a personal connection with your interviewer. You're trying to break that barrier between you guys and see, just them as a person. What do they enjoy as a company? And again, it'll help you navigate if you also want to be a part of that company. And then finally, do you have any concerns about my fit for this role? So this question specifically will give you the chance to see if anything within the interview gave your interviewer the wrong impression. So that way you can answer their concerns. So if they tell you, well, we think you might lack some experience with the specific thing. Like for example, for a computer engineer, they might say something like, well, it seems like you lack experience with JavaScript. Is this something that we need within our company, and it seems like that's something you're not capable of? They might not say it like that, but this is your chance to be like, well, I can easily pick up the skill, or here's another project that I've worked on with JavaScript. It's just not mentioned in my resume. It's a way for you to make up whatever loose ends that there could be. And like I mentioned, maybe you bombed the interview questions, but this is your chance to make it up. It's never over until the very end. Fight until the end. Okay, so some general tips. So, in general, I would have a document with a list of the questions, interview questions, like I mentioned earlier in the slides, and have some answers. So, when you do have an interview, I would look back at these questions, and you'll probably have them memorized from as much as you practice them. But then that way you can tweak it a little bit to match the company, or if you have more projects or whatever, you can edit the answers. Practice, 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 practice. So practice in the mirror, practice with your friends, and make sure you're practicing out loud because practicing in your head is not really gonna translate to practicing out loud and talking to somebody and actually doing the interview. Constantly update your resume and your LinkedIn. So The more you're advancing in classes and projects, make sure you're showing that on your resume. Make sure your resume itself is also in the standard resume format because you don't want to have anything too extra. You want to just do it standard as it is. In the bottom left corner, you could see a little picture. I would look up some examples online. There's some professors who will check out your resume, resources on campus, and your LinkedIn. So again, a lot of us are in school right now, so your projects, your clubs, constantly be updating your LinkedIn with posts about it, just to show that you're active not only on LinkedIn, but on campus and in your career. Be confident and show it with your body language. So, body language is a big thing. You don't want to seem tight, you don't want to seem scared. You want to be open, show that you're ready for this interview and ready for this job. And finally, for Cal Poly or any school, visit the Career Center and go to interview preparation events because these will help you get like real life practice with interviews and real life help from professionals and people who have been through what you're gonna go through to make sure everything is solid and make sure you're physically ready and mentally ready for your interview. So that's all. Here are my references. You can go ahead and click on any of these hyperlinks, or on the right, I do have some videos I watched with that I put into answers. There's other examples you can look through or look through how they say it. I do recommend the channel in the bottom right corner. He has a lot of videos about interviews. I would also specifically look at your specific major and interview tips, especially when it comes to engineering. You really do need to check out the technical questions as well, which a lot of people forget about. But thank you for tuning in, and I hope this helps.